My name is Marshane, and I'm part of the team here at Oxford College of Marketing. I'd just like to make a note that this webinar is being recorded so that we can send it out to you guys afterwards. Today we've got a really exciting webinar with Robert. He is going to be talking about seeking simplicity in complexity in brand strategy. Robert is a chief strategy officer in a leading fintech company with over 10 million customers, and he's an advisor to a VC firm in the Middle East. So he's very qualified for today's talk. We'll have the presentation from Robert first, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So, Rob, I'll hand over to you now.
Well, Shayla, thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for those of us that are joining. Those of you that are joining us for lunchtime today. Hopefully, it will be worth your time. I think, I'm looking forward to doing this talk, and I hope we can cover a lot of ground. I think brand strategy can be quite a complex business, and we'll get into that. And I'm looking to give you some of the practical ways that you can really cut through and look to, in your own jobs, in your own firms, try and remove that complexity, both for your teams, but then obviously for yourselves, you're leading those firms, or if you end up leading them in your career. And I think I'm going to go through some case studies. I'm not an academic, so I don't look at brand strategy every day, all day, and all of the intricacies that can be in it. But clearly, if you're working within a firm, even if you're a chief financial officer, you should be aware and mindful of the brand value you've got within your business. And typically that can be up to 50% of a firm's value as the goodwill, as the name, the label, and the perception that people have in it. So clearly there's a massive financial component to your brand. And even though, I want to get into that and look at it. So the first thing obviously to cover is, what is a brand? And its most basic is about, it's a term or a sign or a symbol, or a combination of those, which can identify the maker of a product or a service. And that's from Philip Kotler, who, Philip Kotler was or still is the professor emeritus at Kellogg School of Management in America, at Northwestern. And he's sort of the godfather, if you will, of brand strategy and marketing strategy over the last 20, 30 years. And so that's his definition of it. But I think that definition is probably now a little bit outdated. I don't think it covers, is it too simplistic? Yeah, I think it probably is. And what about news outlets? I've got the BBC and the CNBC there for the US. You trust them, you understand those brands, but they don't provide or sell a product. They sell other people's news. They give you it for free. So it comes down to the level of trust you've got in those particular organizations to be balanced or not balanced. And that's why some people, or left-wing media or right-wing media, is to get the view that they like reinforced or not reinforced. So I think it's quite important to make that distinction, that even though that is a very simplistic and very clear and concise understanding or definition of what brand strategy is or branding is that I think it's moved beyond that. And I'm very happy to take your questions at the end and what your thoughts are on this. But it's not as simple as it once was, of just being a logo, just being a name. It's gone way beyond that. And in your own businesses, you're going to have to be mindful of what that means for you at a practical level. And that can be good and bad. So I think we've gone too far for a start. Brands have evolved, and it's not just a logo. These days, a brand can be an experience, Legoland or Disneyland. You go there for an experience. Restaurants, to an extent, can be an experience. A smell, it can be a taste, a place, a particular place like the Ritz in London. Yes, there's the Ritz Paris, but the Ritz in London is the one that most of us know. And if you said, the Ritz, you go, oh yeah, the Ritz in London. So there are expectations and understanding around that brand. The Ritz's brand is very clear. It's clearly a very expensive place to stay. You wouldn't go there and expect to have a cheap lunch, or a fairly what would we consider like a reasonably priced drink. You're probably looking at £6-7 for a coffee in the Ritz. So whereas you could go and get the same coffee for £2 somewhere else. But because of where you're having it, because of the cost involved in what is considered to be a superior or better brand experience. Therefore, you pay more for it. Um, and there's a sense of belonging that's often missed in branding. Like you can have a sense of belonging. Sports clubs are massive for this. Your team, yes, they want you to buy merchandise, but they want to be successful. So that's the core of their brand: success, sense of belonging. Where are we going? Why should you be part of us? And there's a big psychological piece to that that has to be managed in a particular way. Competence, obviously huge. If you go to a hospital or a private hospital, you want the doctors and nurses you see to be competent. The brand expecting isn't, you don't want a fun medical brand, you want a competent medical brand. Yeah, so yes, there's a logo, yes, there's a name, yes, there's a place, a hospital, but below that, you're expecting competence. It's what you're looking for. And if you're not, then I'm not sure why you're going there. An association with colors. So there are certain brands who obviously you have an expectation of that there'll be a particular color that you resonate to it. And I've got a can of Coke here, and that's an obvious one. We'll come on to that in a moment. And then a person or a family, certain names bring about certain expectations. And if you've got an unusual surname, people go, oh, okay, you're part of that family. Or Bonham Carter family is one of those examples. If you met someone called Bonham Carter, you're like, oh, okay, you're related to Helena Bonham Carter. Yeah, I am. Or no, I'm not. We're just a different offshoot. Oh, okay. But there comes an expectation with that. And then lastly, an image, which can be physical or reputational, an image of someone that you want to be seen with, or that can be an image. So thinking about the Ritz, which is in front of you there, Mayfair, it's a very clean part of London, very high-end shops, asset management firms, hedge funds, hotels. It's known for certain things. It's not loaded with charity shops or hairdressers, like lots of high streets across the UK are. It's still very high end. You see supercars. It's that type of place, both a physical image that people like interacting with and being associated with, and some people hate it. And then at the same time, there is a reputational image, which is what you expect. You go there and you expect it. There are obviously other places around the world where you expect a similar type of experience. So yeah, I think you've moved beyond, branding's moved beyond just a clearly defined logo and name. So getting the balance is quite vital. Like some of you might work with professional services firms or for professional services firms. This isn't all FMCG or luxury products. If you run a private bank or you work for a private bank, your customers or potential customers are expecting a particular type of experience, right? So they're expecting to see the bank in certain places. So Coutts is on the Strand. If you had a private bank in Monaco, again, that would come with its own associations and expectations. Like, well, this makes sense for it to be here. You wouldn't necessarily expect to have a private bank in, I don't know, let's pick somewhere that's fairly poor. Burkina Faso is sadly one of the poorest countries in the world. If you had a private bank in Burkina Faso, you'd be like, well, this is a place to have a European private bank. It doesn't really sit. So you have expectations as a potential client. So you expect to see in certain places. You're hoping you don't want it to be exciting. You want there to be competent and qualified and well dressed, to meet your needs and what you're expecting. And then there's a level of continuity of service that obviously you want as part of that, and understanding, what are you going to get from that in terms of, it's raining so hard here. In terms of, what are you going to get? How will it work? It's costing you money as a potential customer. It's not free to be in a private bank. So therefore, you're going to have that aspect of it. It's going to affect it. And then from a point of view of the Ivy has done something quite interesting, which has been around. It's moved out of just being one location in London to having multiple sites, multiple restaurants. And that's been good. It's enabled it to interact with more people. But at the same time, you can say, well, it's not the same experience. So, yes, there has a certain look, a certain feel, a certain menu that you're expecting to get out of it when you go there, and it comes with a certain price expectation. But on the downside is people say, well, you've actually watered down your brand. It's no longer about this one place that I can go to. I now can go to lots of places. So in moving out of London and going to lots of other cities, Exeter, Cardiff, I'd imagine Edinburgh, what they're doing is, yes, they're bringing it closer, but there's also a trade-off to be had by losing some level of exclusivity by going, well, we only do 50 covers, 100 covers a day. Actually, well, now we do 2,000 covers around the UK every day. And then, from a staffing perspective, you've got, well, you're expecting qualified people. And for some people who may have had the experience of dealing with the IB in London, is it going to be the same level of service that you would get, say, in Cardiff or Bristol or Exeter or anywhere else? Maybe not. The staff are probably not full-time. Some of them might be part-time students. And so you're probably watering down a little bit some of that brand expectation that comes with it. And so the psychology from that, from a customer perspective, is like, well, it's not as good as going to the one in London. So it's not as nice an experience that you could have had. And just to say, I think when it comes to branding, it's all of those things combined. It's not just one thing. Your brand is not just a logo. It's not just a color. It's not just a car. It is everything that you do, and that can be across your operations, your finance, your marketing. It isn't just one thing, and that has people forget that. Often in a firm, you'll talk to a marketing team, and there'll only be one person. The marketing team will go, oh, well, you're just one part of this firm, when actually it requires the whole firm to be having similar thoughts and similar feelings in order to maintain that brand strategy. So why is a brand difficult? Why is it complex? Well, I think it's complex for a number of reasons. It requires long-term thinking and implementation and a vision of where you want to be. If you work for a company that's already got a big established brand, say Rolex or Tag Heuer or something, if it's a luxury brand, or if it's not a luxury brand, so you work for Tesco or Asda, there's an expectation. And therefore, if it's a brand you've sort of inherited, or maybe you're consulting on, like, well, do you want to do more of the same? You're like, yes, we do, because we're known for being this type of company. We don't want to necessarily be positioned in a different way. And that can be quite hard. It's simple, but it isn't necessarily simple. Your brand strategy obviously then has an impact on how your business is perceived by your target market. Do you want to be seen as luxury? Do you want to be seen as premium? Are you something for everybody? Are you catering to a particular demographic or age range? And so you have to manage that accordingly. And it can be quite difficult to move, if you don't have the right brand architecture, to move from one to another. So that I'm thinking of Tissot, the Swiss watch brand, which has lots of other brands below it. And some of them are more expensive than Tissot itself. And so what you get is quite expensive watches made by Tissot, and then Tissot's own watch is probably 150, 200 pounds. Whereas some of the watches they sell can be upwards of £1,000. So that's quite interesting, catering to different types of people, men, women, certain price points, but all under one brand house. So I think it requires you to be aligned. And what I mean by that is order winners and order qualifiers. I don't know if you've come up against this type of thinking before, but an order qualifier is basically what gets you to the game line when it comes to business. It'd be a partnership, that could be with customers. It's like saying, okay, so you've got a store, you're fairly competent, you've got what I think you need, that I think I need from you. But now I'm doing a trade-off between, okay, do I go to you or do I go to somewhere else? So let me give you a practical example. So M&S and Waitrose in the UK are pretty similar in terms of what they sell. They've got a similar customer demographic that they're trying to go after. The price points are fairly similar. They're slightly different in the way they do it. M&S is more, buy a meal for two or a meal for four. Whereas Waitrose is a bit more supermarket-esque. But the two of them fundamentally are trying to get to the point where, or they are at the point where they're both perceived as being premium shopping experiences in food and beverage as supermarkets. But that's their order qualifiers. Where are you seen? How competent are you? How much do we trust you? What is your brand? What does it cost to shop here? And then the order winners are, yeah, okay, I like M&S a bit more because I think the food's slightly better. It's ever so slightly more expensive, or by extension, people might say, I prefer Waitrose. I think it's more accessible. It's slightly cheaper, but still exclusive. So there's that order winner, order qualifier piece, which was actually an operations management um, paper, academic paper. So I'd recommend, if you can, to have a look at that. Too many firms can be inconsistent with their brand. They're like, oh, we're doing this. And I've been in many meetings with executives of firms going, yeah, we want to be fun. You're like, yeah, but you're a trusted asset management business, or you're a trusted hotel group. Why do you want to all of a sudden be fun? They're like, oh, we want to be engaging with people on TikTok. You know, right, okay, but are the people that use TikTok necessarily the people you want to engage with? They're like, oh, teenagers, like, well, yeah, but teenagers don't buy holidays, their parents do. So like, oh, okay, yeah, good point. Or yeah, we want to engage with the younger demographic. Like, yeah, we can do that, but do that at a product level. You don't have to necessarily tarnish or change the entirety of your corporate brand just because you want to go after one particular demographic. The risk of doing that is obviously that you lose all the customers you've already got. So you don't want to do that. You're going to be very careful with being, being consistent with your brand. And then being great at branding, but awful at customer service. You meet so many companies that are like, yeah, we've got a great brand, we're such a cool place to work. And then you read reviews on a TripAdvisor or FIFA or Trustpilot, and you go, holy moly, this firm's terrible. It's really bad at customer service. Why would I trust it? And so many firms can neglect customer service, and that's at the detriment. That's a negative for them. They forget that. There's so much about selling the next product and being seen as amazing that they forget that some people didn't have a good experience with them. So you need to address that, and that's quite difficult to do that depending on where you are in the firm. If you are the CMO of the firm, yes, you have more opportunity to take ownership of that. But maybe you're not the CMO. Maybe you're starting out in a career, and therefore you don't feel that you have that ability to say that. But I would if you feel brave enough, do raise it and say, yeah, we're neglecting this, and this will be a cost to us, repeat business or bad word of mouth. So, and I think dynamic strategy, evolving with the changing market conditions, that can be tough. That can be difficult. Just because you've set up a really good stall or a really good website, great, we're here now, but we've built it and they will come. They might not. So what are you going to do about that? How do you make sure that you absolutely are targeting the right person? And that can be quite difficult. Some people have to go for a very generic strategy when it comes to positioning themselves to try and be globally positioned for everyone everywhere. There are trade-offs. There are very clearly trade-offs for that. So value, thinking about brand value, like what is your brand? What is the value that you give people? Is obviously a really important thing. So many people forget the value that the company actually brings to the people who buy it. Are you making life more easier? Are you enriching someone's life? Are you giving them a sense of belonging that they can't get anywhere else because you are a sports team? Or you offer events that others don't go to because you need to be part of this in order to access it. So I don't know, thinking about particular type of clubs. So there's a real piece around thinking about brand and then also matching it with the value you create for people. Some people say, yeah, we've got a really cool brand, and therefore you should definitely engage with us, and we don't care about the value. But you've got to get both of those right. And firms and people within firms do forget the value side. They're like, oh well, we are who we are. And yeah, some firms, I guess, become so timeless or so storied that they don't have to forget the value, but people know who they are to the extent where, like, well, this is what we do. But even if you think about Disney or McDonald's, Disney will say, well, our value is in lasting memories of fun and excitement for children and for family holidays. That is the value we create. We create like a wonderful non-real world that people can explore and enjoy, both in film but then in real life. Whereas McDonald's say, well, the value we create is we feed people quickly. That's what they expect. They expect it to be fairly cheap, fairly quick, and good enough for their entire family. People have obviously, McDonald's has evolved over time. So we don't just sell fast food. You can now buy salad. You can now buy vegan, and in order to try and cater to more people. And I guess going back a slide, thinking about how things have changed over time, think, okay, well, a lot more people are vegan or vegetarian. They don't want to engage with you if you're going to do it this particular way. I think if you try and get that idea or move away from complexity, I just wanted to give you this slide just to say this is why things are complex. You've got so many different factors, identification, thinking about attractiveness, which really comes down to scarcity. How attractive are you? Where do people access you or not? Attachment, so brand evangelism, evangelism, and thinking, yeah, I love this brand so much that I tell people about it all the time. I've had such a good experience. I've told my friends. And so that filters into that word of mouth piece. And if you're working in a marketing department, obviously people talk about funnels of marketing, like this is the customer journey, this is the user experience. And Amazon in one way has got it right. If you don't like something that Amazon sent you, you could say this wasn't good enough, and they'll say, great, we'll collect it, here's your money back straight away. Like there's no 20, you've got to wait 28 days, or we need to inspect it. It's like, here's your money back, we'll deal with it with the vendor or ourselves if it was something that we sold, if you're not happy with it. As you go, yeah, I bought this product, I didn't like it, but wow, Amazon are really good at looking after me in terms of me getting my money back. And so for oftentimes I've seen, and you probably have seen as well, that in marketing teams, or even if you're not in a marketing team but you're leading a firm, as they come to you and go, and right, and this is the POS, this is the point of sale, and that's it. And you're like, okay, well, what about the rest? Like, okay, well, we've got a newsletter, and you're like, okay, cool. And that's that fine line between a brand bothering you, like every day a new offer, and you're like, I don't need to be told every day about this new offer you've got. I didn't buy the last 7 days. Why am I going to buy this one? So you're over communicating with me. I don't need this. So it comes back to that consistent messaging. Whereas I follow some brands personally, and you get a monthly newsletter or maybe two, and it says this is what we've got, and you're like, okay, nice, cool. We'd like to invite you to this event. You're like, okay, great. And so it's slightly different. And then the other one, obviously, coming back to is customer service, and then alliance marketing, where you partner with other firms. And that partnership piece can be really important, because when you partner with another organization to improve your brand, let's pick on Tag Heuer watches with Formula One, there are trade-offs to that. So both of those two things are seen as being inclusive, expensive, globally orientated, exciting. But there are downsides to both. There are risks to both sides. So you've got to get those right and try and be in harmony with all of it, in order to make sure that your brand strategy is in the right way and you're not over diluting it. So it's quite important. So I remember Barcelona Football Club for years just had a deal with UNICEF. It didn't have a big title sponsor, it just had a sponsor, and Nike, I think, sports sponsor. So it made that conscious decision to go, we want to support a cause, not a company. And it had a lot of respect from that, because our trade-off is we can afford not to have a major sponsor, a corporate, and instead go, we're going to give you this space, UNICEF, for free. And they go, very much. And by the way, we're also the biggest club in the world right now. So that's one of the things that they did to also do that. I think when you're thinking about your brand strategy and strategy implementation, it's always best to come back to the core. I'm going to go through all these in detail, but target audience analysis. And some people just want to get to everyone. You can't have everyone. Like, you're not going to be in a position to attract everybody. It's just not going to work. Like, you have to really think about, what is it you're creating? Who is it for? Is it aspirational? Is it storied? Is it something that people want to be part of? Is it something that's just day to day, like Tesco? You go to Tesco or whatever supermarket you go to, or Carrefour, or whatever, and you just go, right, I need to get what I need to get. I expect it to have what I need it to have, and then I go home again. And it's just the experience is, I'm expecting competence and a level of pricing. If it's too high, I'm just not going to buy it. Yeah. So your positioning is quite important in that respect. Target audience, and then obviously thinking about your competitors. Every firm competes really hard with lots of other firms, and it can be quite difficult at times to make sure that you're branded in a way which is similar to them, but also at the same time you're differentiated enough that you can also make yourself known in your own right. So your visual identity is obviously important. And then at the bottom, if you've come onto it already, but the brand experience you're expecting to have is so important. If you work in a marketing team, I've worked with some firms who say, oh, when was the last time you did sort of customer talks or focus groups? And so we haven't done it. Well, why not? Why don't you talk to the people who actually buy your product? Oh, well, we're afraid to talk because they don't tell us something we don't like. Right, okay, well, that's mad. Like if they don't like something, you need to know that. Get in the room, hear them out. Let them be absolutely brutally honest with you about what you're doing, right and wrong. You can't learn if you don't know that, and your strategy will probably have to change, long term, in order to make sure that you're always meeting those needs. So I want to come on to some case studies. So Coca-Cola versus Pepsi is an obvious one. Two globally recognized brands. Again, I know you can't answer me back at this point, but I think with Coca-Cola, you expect it to be like it's the biggest. You think it's the biggest. You think it's the most well-known of the two, but actually, it's not quite that way. So Coca-Cola was formed before. Pepsi sort of positions itself as being the challenger to Coke, but it's been around for as long as Coke. It makes more money than Coca-Cola. Both of them have a distinct identity of being American. Like when I think about Coca-Cola, I've got one here. I think, well, it's an American brand. It's an American company I'm buying, and that comes with a certain level of expectation that you get from certain companies. So if you buy something from Switzerland, you're expecting it to be expensive, and it'd be odd if it were cheap. You're like, well, why is this product, which is from an advanced economy that's known for being notoriously expensive, cheap? That doesn't make sense. So you would be like, I don't get it. There is a level of expectation again to think, oh, this is going to be good or this is going to be bad, depending where it comes from. And then in terms of their marketing approaches, so Pepsi's been very good at poking fun at Coca-Cola and having a lot of fun with its marketing. It's been more aggressive and sort of insurgent in its marketing against Coca-Cola and positioning itself as being, we're a challenger, we're the challenger brand, and targeting a younger demographic and being seen in different places. So Coca-Cola, is seen in certain stores. And there's a really interesting book called Biology, which is BUY-ology, and a Danish marketing expert. He looked at the psychology of particular brands and why people buy them. I've got a copy of it here somewhere. And Coca-Cola was one of the ones that he utilized, and he picked on American Idol in the US and the four key sponsors of that particular show. And one of them was Ford, one of them was Coca-Cola, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the other two. And he said he did focus groups, an hour, 6 hours, and I think a week, and then a month, and asked people, what can you remember about these particular companies that sponsored the show? And because of the product placement of Coca-Cola being on the desk where the judges were in red cups, even though it didn't say Coca-Cola, that's what people remembered most. Of all of the companies that sponsored it, the only one they could really remember was Coca-Cola. So it's interesting to see how those two companies, obviously Coca-Cola Red, Pepsi Blue, and the way that they have done this battle over a long period of time. And I thought it was quite intriguing when I looked at the two that Pepsi makes more money than Coca-Cola, because I'd expected it to be the other way. Coca-Cola would make more money, but no, it's actually the other way around. So Pepsi is bigger, much larger, at least in a numbers perspective. Moving on. Ferrari, I wanted to use the Ferrari brand. I think Ferrari is a really useful case study in brand simplicity. And that's been sort of from the day dot of, well, once it got over its sort of financial issues in the 30s and 40s. But I think beyond that, when in the 50s, when Enzo Ferrari was building cars in the 60s, it became very, very well known for certain aspects and certain things. And it's really just stuck consistently to them, and hasn't really shied away from them. And you expect certain things from Ferrari when you deal with it. So, you expect a Ferrari car to be expensive, performance related, phenomenal engineering, they're hand built, made in Italy, red, more likely red, yellow, or black. That's the typical colors. So if someone said, I've got a Ferrari, oh, is it red? You're like, no, it's yellow. Or it's blue. Why would you buy a blue Ferrari? Yeah. Formula One, in relation to having a relationship with Formula One, exciting or desirable. I mean, some people would hate to own a Ferrari, and very expensive to maintain, but those are some of the things, the expectations that you have when dealing with Ferrari as a brand. And Ferrari makes more money from selling merchandise than it does from selling cars, significantly more for merchandise. So it's not actually, I mean, it is an automotive maker, but it's more of a retailer. It's a merchandising retailer, it's a clothing brand, it's an accessories company, more so than it is a car company in terms of where its revenues come. But it's very consistent. You expect a certain thing. It likes to be seen in certain places. It has deep associations, and it isn't really willing to compromise on those. It doesn't mess around with its brand too much. It doesn't change its logo to stay up to date with the times. It doesn't go, oh, we want to be really cool this year, let's change the logo. No, let's leave the flow exactly as it is and as it ever was. I think crucially, there's absolute certainty about Ferrari. Yeah, whether you like the brand or not, the point is you know what you're getting with a Ferrari, right? Not necessarily with the car itself, but with the brand. You go, okay, well, if I go into a Ferrari store, I would expect to have a certain experience. If I went into a Ferrari showroom, I expect to be treated well and know what I'm buying. I'm going to be really good. If I'm not happy with it, they'll want to resolve that. It might cost me a lot of money to put it right, but they will resolve it. So as I say, it comes with expectation. I think expectation is really important in branding. I think, when you deal with a company, you have a certain level of expectation. So when I'm in the UK, I have an EE mobile, really easy to deal with EE. It comes with certain expectations for me. I'm like, right, if I've got a problem, I can call them. They will solve the issue as quickly as possible. And I won't be led around the houses going, oh, we can't do it, wait 10 days or whatever. They'll try and sort it for me straight away because they want me to have a good brand experience. And as a result, my UK mobile, I think I've had with them for the last 25 years. And I've got the same number for the last 25 years, something like that. And so, I've not moved away from that company. I've been, it's quite interesting. So with Ferrari, you've got, color, rarity. Certain models are very rare. You think about where you'll see it, and then where it stands, what it stands for as a company, and then thinking about the customer experience that you'll have, and then hand built. So there's still a level of quality around non-machine built cars, and the cost of that is obviously higher because of the labor involved. Notably, Ferrari doesn't build an EV car. It hasn't gone down the road of building EV yet. I don't think it's announced one either. So it's gone, well, we are, a petrol bus and car company, and that's what we want to retain to be for as long as humanly possible. And that's the trade-off that they've made. They're not looking to update that. And I guess when you have a car that costs so much, why would you want to move? You're not planning to be a mass market car company. One of you is probably going to tell me that that's no longer the case, and they now do have that an EV car coming forward. Brand versus reality is obviously really important. So I've got Carpe Diem, the nightclub in off the coast of Croatia in Hvar, which is very expensive to go into. It has an interesting brand experience for any of you that have been there. You go there on a boat, drinks are expensive, it's expensive to get in. But that's meant to be part of its charm, is the exclusivity around it. You've got to physically get there. Then when you get there, you've got to pay to get in. You've got to, and then on the other side, I've got the Fire Festival, which wanted to sort of do what Carpe Diem does on most days in the summer, but didn't quite get there, famously, and messing that up. But I think that reality part, if you're in an organization, comes back to the operations side of a brand. So, you can have some great content, really good branding, really good visuals and design people. If you can't match it operationally, you're kind of wasting your time, because that's going to come back to bite you. You need to be as competent operationally as you are in terms of marketing and branding. And those two don't always meet. That's why you see firms getting fined for mis-selling. That's why you see firms having massive complaints, or festivals not working because they haven't prepared enough on the operational side. Too much consideration has been given to the brand over substance over style, right? So you've got to get the substance right as much as you get the style right. And thinking about in the UK, obviously Glastonbury, come rain or shine, Glastonbury is on, whether it's really, really muddy or not, they always operate. So the people that buy tickets go, well, it doesn't matter if it's going to be hailing, we can still go. So there's clearly a resiliency to their brand at at Glastonbury that it will be on. You know, we will be going ahead unless there's a flood or something. We will go ahead. Chanel versus Jo Malone. I wanted to briefly touch on this one. So Chanel is like this timeless, classic French, you know, high culture brand. But she herself, Coco Chanel, has an interesting past, which I'll let you look into yourselves if you so wish, which would sort of detract from the brand, shall we say. And then Jo Malone, still living, still going, still very much at the heart of her business. The two are similarly priced, they're similarly positioned in the market, and there are similar brand expectations when you go in, if you were to go and buy one of their products. And I appreciate that Jo Malone is perfume and Chanel does bags as well, and other bits and bobs. But from that fragrance side, there's an expectation of what it will be. And so Chanel has a PR pass that it has to, you know, to get over and try and avoid people knowing about. But then it's also part of a bigger brand architecture in LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, the large French group. And those two companies are very similar, but one is obviously almost basically static in Chanel. You know, the lady that founded it's no longer there, and none of her family have inherited it. So it is a standalone company. Whereas Jo Malone, she's still very much, she can decide where that business goes. And you would think perceptionally that Jo Malone is a more exciting company because the person running it is still there. And that if you've got a sense of belonging, or if you want to have a particular experience, if you want to meet the person, you can still do that with Jo Malone. Whereas Chanel, it's past, this is what it was. Yeah, I think it's quite important to see how similar brands trading off of different styles do it. People as brands. So if you're ever working in PR, you might get asked to position people. People are obviously notoriously difficult to position. And for that is that, you know, they, depending on what they're about or who they are, you know, you're going to have different ways of having to manage that. So I think people, this is the Baldwin family, Alec Baldwin and his brothers, and you know, they're famous in the acting world, and certain families get known for certain things. And I think that's quite interesting in terms of the way a brand is managed, because you don't necessarily manage a family brand. Like, I can't name all of the Baldwin brothers there. But I know what they're about, and I would have an expectation of what I would have and what it would be to be involved with them. So some families and individuals create a brand for themselves. This typically allowed them to trade on that name or build trust or build brand equity. So to the point where you trust them, you go, yeah, okay, they're good. This person's exciting. I want to be around them. I want to be associated with what they're doing. And families have become known for their involvement in certain sectors or job types. And I'm going to mention an example that's not quite the same, but it's not per se structured like a company. And some people are more prominent than others. So thinking about, I think the next slide is, yeah, so you've got the Jenner Kardashian family there. Some of them are more famous than others. Below them is the Barrett brothers, who play rugby for New Zealand. There are actually 4 brothers, all play rugby. One of them, sadly, doesn't play for the team, for the national team. And you know, and then you've also got the Trump family. Some people in the Trump family more involved with the family than others. So Tiffany, the blonde lady, is not that involved. And then obviously the royal family. So fairly small. You know exactly what they're about. You know, they've got a mixed reputation depending if you're a Republican or a royalist or not. And so, you know, that impacts both positively and negatively. Like, some people wouldn't want to do a deal or a partnership with the Trump organization at this time, whereas I would imagine that most brands would want to do some form of partnership or relationship with the Kardashian Jenner family because of the amount that they sell. They've been so successful that you're like, well, yeah, of course I would love to have you. And then equally, Meghan and Kate, you know, if they wear a dress, it normally sells out in you know 10, 15 minutes. So being associated with them as a brand and as people is phenomenally valuable, even if they themselves as individuals don't get along, even though they're part of the same family. There is a complex business, or can be a complex business. And just thinking about the it can be highly complex. So Matthew Freud, who runs Freud Communications, he said that even he was part of a famous family, the Freud family. Sigmund Freud is obviously the most famous person in that family. He said when he was growing up, there was sort of an unwritten rule that you didn't take or you didn't do what somebody else had previously done, which is unusual because normally, if you're a famous son or a famous daughter of somebody, you want to be loosely associated with what they've done because of, say, sport. The Beckham family, one of the Beckhams plays football in the US, whereas I think Brooklyn Beckham doesn't. He's a photographer. So, but in his family, he said that it was very much the case that you shouldn't follow. There was like an unwritten rule that was discussed between family members that you didn't do what somebody else had done. And so he went into PR and then subsequently found out that one of his former family, one of his ancestors, had indeed invented PR, and that he was the second person to do it. So that's quite interesting looking at that. Whereas the Arnault family in France, Bernard Arnault is handing down his business to his children and even some of his grandchildren, and they're slowly taking over those brands, individual brands, to run as they see fit as part of the wider group. So it'll be interesting to see how those brands, not the family brand, but how the brand develops now that one person is no longer leading the charge. And what does it mean when you've got 5 or 6 individuals, yes, from the same family, but with different ideas on what those sub brands should do or not do. And then lastly, families can be tainted or liked depending on who they are and what they do. And then people, obviously, there has to be an understanding around what they are and who they are. So, I mean, I'll pick on the Rothschild family, or not pick on them, but utilize them as an example. So, some conspiracy theorists say, oh, the Rothschilds are to blame for lots of political issues around the world, and some people say, well, they're just a finance family that run investment banks or private banks, and they buy lots of artwork. They're just people. So they've got a mixed brand, which there's a conspiratorial element to them, and then some people are, well, they're just investors, and some people say they're just a family. What are you getting at? What's the problem here? They're just normal human beings. So it can be quite difficult to manage that, especially if you're PR people or marketing people trying to promote an individual, and the way that you can do that. I want to go on to branding countries. I don't know if any of you have worked with countries. I think it's really good work branding countries and the expectations and the visuals and how you go about making a country attractive. Now that can be quite hard. I've done that in some emerging markets where you're working with a country. You think, well, there's no offense to you, that you're not the best place to do business. You're not the easiest place to do business. So what can we do? But I thought Italy is a country that yourselves can probably look to and go, yeah, okay, I really understand what Italy does. I like it. It's a positive place. It's a place that people like to visit, that tourists want to go to because of things like the cafes in the streets, and because of the Fiat cars, and because of our understanding of Italy as a place, makes it attractive. It makes it somewhere that we want to go. So if I think one of the most exciting and interesting things you can do professionally, I think, is work with countries, with a country, on making it and branding it in an appropriate way. And especially if you're taking it from doing the things that it already knows to do well, and then say, okay, we want to do something else. So the Middle East is doing that at the moment. Saudi Arabia, oil, gas, is going, well, now we want to be known for other things. So Formula One, for building, for architecture, for football. It's changing the way that its economy works. It's trying to become more service led. It's the same in the UAE. It's the same in Bahrain. To a lesser extent, it's the same in Qatar, with them trying to move away from what they do to be seen to be doing other things. It's complex because it's a country. There are limits. There are limits to that. You couldn't package Denmark as being the best place to come for a summer holiday because it's not that warm. There are limits to it. So you have to play within the realms of what there is. And for some people, Denmark is an amazing place. Copenhagen often ranks as the best city in the world to live in. And for others, they might say, well, it's just really cold. It's a bit boring. Once you've ridden a bike a few times, it's not that exciting. I think it's a really great city, but people have different experiences. And then countries always want to be known as the best place, the best it can be. which is hard because the reality isn't always the same. There are always other issues that come about. And if you're working for a corporate communications agency or a marketing agency, obviously you can build a perception of a nation, but there'll always be things that are going to go round that or attack that, or issues that you're going to probably have to overcome. Does Italy offer a complex case for simplicity? I think Italy offers, at a high level, a very simplistic case because you know what you're getting. People think about the Tuscan region in the north, and then some of the products that you would get in Italy. So you go to Rome, or certain football clubs, or E&I, the oil company, or pasta or pizza from Napoli, and certain cities that people like to go to, Verona or Venice. There are expectations that you have that have been built up over time of why Italy is such a cool place to visit and see. And when you go there, I mean, I went to Italy a few years ago and I got fined for not I bought my ticket on the train, and just as I was leaving the country, I got fined on the train to the airport because I didn't put it through the ticket press machine to show that I'd stamped it. I thought, well, I'm leaving, it doesn't matter. And I got fined, I think, €50. So I had a really sour experience at the end of that trip. And I said to the guard, I'm leaving, I'm going, I'm flying away, I'm going to the airport with my bags. He said, it doesn't matter, I'm fining you. I thought, I bought my tickets right here. I said, no, I don't care. So, whilst I'd had a lovely time in Rome, at the same time, I was like, well, this is a really crap experience. And I think I even put a post on TripAdvisor going, well, it's a lovely place, do go, but bear in mind this. And it's the same with Greece, it's the same with Spain, not the bad bits, but the good bits. You go there for certain reasons. You go to Greece for the islands or the beaches. You go there for the food, you go there for the cultural aspects. You're not expecting to confront some of the underlying issues that the country might face. And if you're thinking about this from a business perspective, you've got that time to, there are some countries that are easy to do business with than others. And you know that. When you go there, it's going to be codified. So, picking on the UK, business here is built on trust, as it is everywhere, but we also rely on lawyers. We also rely on people giving you a sense of, you want reference points. You call someone, I met this person today from this company. Is it a good company? Is it a good company to do business with? Is it easy to do business with them? And people say, yeah, okay, it is, or no, it's not. And you will have varying experiences depending on where you are in the world. In Africa, it can be quite difficult to have that sort of same brand reputational experience when it comes to business transactions. Like, oh, we invest this money, is it going to be used for what we wanted it to be used? But you face the same risks in the UK. That money could clearly be squandered, embezzled, but there's a perceptional piece which is like, well, can I trust these people in Nigeria to do this that I want to do, or can I trust these people in Egypt or Tunisia or wherever it is to actually get it done? And that comes down to sort of that development piece of going, well, where is this country in its development? What is it about? Is it somewhere that I understand? Is it somewhere that I trust? Is it somewhere that I like? And so for as much as people like Italy, and it's the 10th largest economy or 11th largest economy in the world, it does have problems that people don't necessarily think about. So I'm going to come, it's got a huge migrant problem. It's got a problem with organized crime. It's got a problem with, not so much now, but it's still there. It's got a problem with poverty. 10% of the Italian economy, if not more, is perceived to be black market economy. So, organized crime doing that, which is a massive, we think about this as the 10th largest economy in the world. And at the same time, 10%, maybe more than 10% of the economy is actually black market, fake goods, counterfeit, illegal, illicit goods. And so that's massive. And so there is a, depending on where you are in Italy, and again, to reiterate, I like Italy as a place. You've got to think about where and how and when you're going to interact with those types of brands. If you're dealing with a brand from Italy, just go back one. Well, that's the bad. But Get back. If you were dealing with a particular company, say Juventus, like, okay, well, it's going to be clean. It's owned by Exor, which is a large conglomerate run by the same people who own Fiat and The Economist, and they've ventured out, but it comes with certain expectations. And picking on Juventus, they have to manage that brand of what are we, Juventus, the football club, about? What yes, we're Italian, so we need certain Italian players to make sure that we meeting up to the values of our fan base, which is that we'll be a club that produces homegrown talent, but at the same time, we also want big stars who aren't Italian to go there. So a few years ago, Cristiano Ronaldo was there. Jack Wilshere was there, the English player. So they bring in people from outside too to make it that to latch on to particular places. And thinking about the UK for a moment, and Tottenham Football Club, because it's what I've dealt with recently. They obviously have Son Heung-min, who's from South Korea. And the brand value, the brand equity that he brings from Asia is enormous. The buying power that he has brought into their merchandise is huge, just by the extension of doing that. So he really adds to the brand and expectation. And I don't know if any of you have been to Egypt, but it's the same with Mohamed Salah of Liverpool Football Club. Everyone knows Mohamed Salah. Everyone in Egypt probably seems to support Liverpool. So, and then the reason for that is because he's there. So, their brand has been built in Africa on the fact they've got one particular player. There's nothing to do with the fact it's Liverpool as a city. It's to do with the fact that they have a player who everyone else loves and everyone else thinks is brilliant, and therefore they want to be associated with the club and with that player by extension. So that's the bad side of Italy, and there's always trade-offs. No company is ever perfect, and even firms I've worked with are never perfect. There's always things you can get right and things you can do better within your brand to maintain it and to make it work. I don't mean more time, but I want to think about so some brands are moving away from having no brand, or trying to move away from the concept of branding and logos and trying to give an experience which is slightly different. So No Logo is actually a book by Naomi Klein. It's written 25 years ago, I think. And it's, I'll come to what it's about, but there's a term which some of you may have come across called quiet luxury, where it's quite understated, where you work with a brand that's intentionally trying to understate the brand equity, the experience it has, and it's sort of, do either you know about it or you don't. Either you've read about it or you don't, or you notice it or you don't. It's a really interesting concept, and some of the firms that are doing it really well. And I guess from a brand management, marketing, communication strategy, corporate strategy side, there's obviously quite a big risk involved in going, well, we're no longer going to try and put our actual brand out there so much. We want it to be reliant on an aspect of our product or of our service for people just to recognize who we are. So Tesla is in that kind of ballpark. They don't have a marketing team. I don't think Tesla anymore. They certainly have a comms team anymore. They've, Elon Musk has gotten rid of the comms team. And it's an exciting company to be associated with because it's been a first mover. It's doing big things. It has Elon Musk as its founder, and he is an interesting brand in himself, in terms of what he says and what he does, and the expectations that people have of him, and the expectations he has of himself, and the way that he positions that business. It's been seen, and it's being seen to be in certain ways. So you don't really see Tesla advertise that much. Yes, it does have a brand. It hasn't completely moved away from any brand at all. So going back a slide, thinking about Christian Louboutin and his shoes, women wear those shoes and go, okay, they're Christian Louboutin. I know that because the bottom of them is red. And I was talking to someone recently, and they said, well, do you know what the reason why they're red? And I said, well, I assume it's because of the sort of quiet luxury, understated nature. And they said, well, yeah, partly, but also no one wants scuffed, dirty soles of their shoes. So if you make them red and paint them red, by the time you've worn them 6, 8, 9, 10 times, the bottom's scuffed. and therefore you either want to buy a new pair or get them resold at the company so that they're clean again. And I thought it was quite interesting that need to constantly go back and have that repeat business perspective. So it's a philosophy of luxury that encompasses subtlety and understatement and refined taste, rather than being, opulent and out there. That Ferrari big red car makes lots of noise when you turn it on. You go, oh God, that guy's got a Ferrari, what an idiot. Oh my God, a Ferrari, amazing, let me get a picture. So, people have different responses to different brands, associations, positioning, and differentiation, which I think is really quite. And then, thinking about the appeal of quiet luxury and the ability to convey the wealth and status of those is recognized in subtle signals. So if you think about the Thai company Hermes, which I always find funny because it's also a delivery of courier company. Two separate businesses but the same name. And I've lived with someone a long time ago who he was walking past somebody in the street and said, "Oh my God, you've got £1,000 tie." And I was with him like, "What? Like, why would you buy it? One, why would you buy £1,000 tie? Two, it's a bit odd that you recognise that person's wearing £1,000 tie. And then thirdly, you've actively gone up to them to reinforce how amazing it is that you're both part of this subtle clique of like, yeah, this is amazing." And just having that experience was an utterly bizarre thing to watch. But that is that quiet luxury piece. You either know about it and it's something you're interested in and believe in, or it's something you don't believe in. And you're like, what is this about? So some firms have started removing logos. Some have been removing their missions and values and making it about you and not them. Richard Mille, the luxury watch company, is a bit like that. It's like them, although they're not quiet. Those particular watches are very ostentatious and big and colourful, and you know exactly what they are. But people were removing their missions and moving their values, and people say, "What are you about?" And you're like, "Well, we're about quiet luxury. We're about a top that you don't necessarily know about." Or if any of you are into cycling, Rafa Racing used to have a strip along the shirt, which is just a banding that would be, if you had a black shirt like I'm wearing today, it'd be white banding here, and it wouldn't say Rafa on it. But because of that particular piece, you'd know it as a Rafa top. So not trying to advertise. People are just expected to know a level of exclusivity. I mean, I've not worked on a firm that's done this or on a product that's doing this, but I imagine it would save a fortune in marketing spend, and as long as you manage it in a very clever way. The particular watch there is a Patek Philippe. It's very expensive. I think that's a £309,000 watch, which you can see it's got Patek Philippe at the bottom, but very understated. If you looked at it, you'd be like, okay, great, nice watch. I wouldn't pay £309,000 for it. And then others are pushing against globalization, which comes back to Naomi Klein's book, which I will just slip back to. So Naomi Klein wrote this book a long time ago. It's sort of referencing a deglobalization movement that logos and companies that, big brands that we would know, are using. They sell to us for a high price in the West, but actually operationally it's done by sweatshops in Southeast Asia, where children are working, where single mothers are working for less than a few dollars a day. That's not acceptable. And then they are presenting themselves to be super clean, super ethical, and actually it's just not the case. So that supply chain element in a company is an area of potential branding risk or PR risk that people often forget about. But there is both intentionally through quiet luxury, but then I guess also intentionally through thinking about pushing back against globalization and capitalism, and saying, well, do I really need this? That the recycling movement or upcycling has become hugely successful and hugely followed. People want to try and reuse things again. And I have a top that I bought from like a vintage shop. It's like £5, a Ralph Lauren top from the 1980s, and it's probably one of my favorite tops, and it's also one of the cheapest tops I've ever bought. So it gives you a sense of what people are trying to do. They're trying, the environmental considerations of brands, and what does that mean, and the way that you as a company can use all of those things to do that. in conclusion, and I'm looking at my watch thinking I'm way ahead of time, but that's fine. I want to give you one more case study, or one more example. Is that brand strategy isn't one thing; it's everything that you do, and that is a psychological thing that that I would advise people take into the workplace, that take into their firm. It's everything you're doing. It's your customer service. It's how you're greeted on the door. If you fly with Ryanair, you have one expectation. If you fly with Qatar Airways, you have another. It's about the way you're treated and the way that they deal with you and the way that you deal with them and interact with them. Managing the complexity is a constant process. I think that the simpler you make yourself, thinking about Ferrari again, the better it can be for you. Like, be about what you are, and then let others, there is that sort of build it and let them come piece. And then, clear choices and expectations should inform your strategy. Who are we? What are we about? And then understanding, which what I mean by that is external understanding of you, is clearly absolutely vital. Amazing how many firms don't get that right. How many, I can think of business schools that don't get it right. They've got 3 brands, they've got an undergraduate school of business, they've got a postgraduate school of business, and then the architecture is in a university. Like, why would you come here? People go to Harvard Business School or Stanford Business School, one, because they think they're going to earn a lot at the end of it. But they're like, okay, this is a really good business school, and this is the reason why it's a good business school. It's because it's got lots of famous alumni, it's got lots of famous faculty, it's expensive to go here, so it's exclusive. I'm going to get the best learning experience in the world, even though you may not, right? And for the most part, an MBA program, I don't know, in Scotland will be the same MBA program in Spain. It'll be the same program in the Middle East as it will be in America, because many of the theories, many of the models have not changed in years, right? So, going back to Philip Kotler at the beginning, Philip Kotler's views have been updated, but some of his fundamentals have stayed the same since the 80s and 90s, right? So he has that consistency of saying, this is what a brand is, this is what you should do. And I don't know if any of you have watched Rory Sutherland. Who used to work at, I think he still works at Ogilvy, the advertisement agency. But he's very clear on what you can do to have a good brand, and the way that you should be doing that, and the understanding and the psychological and economic things that you can do to manage a brand properly. And the simpler and more exciting you can be, the better off you'll be. The best brands, or the biggest brands in the world, are often the ones that are most understood, most recognizable, and therefore people want to interact with them. I'd like to give you an example from the UK. So there's an estate agency called Chesterton's in London. It has a purple brand. I think they sponsor a book festival. They sponsor polo in the park at the polo club, Hurlingham Polo Club. And they're known for selling property in prime locations in London. So Mayfair, West London, Central London. That's where they do their business. So they have a very clear sense, of who they're trying to deal with from a customer's perspective. It's people who want to buy, sell, let, or buy, sell, let, or rent out property in that particular area, or who want to do research or valuations in a particular part of the UK, not the whole of the UK, just a part of the UK. And then they do some international stuff. They're very clear on who they are, what they talk about. If you look at Chesterton's The Press, it talks about where the market's going. It talks about big things that people need to be aware of, in terms of price engagement, in terms of interest rates. But all filters back to what they do as a core competency business, which is about saying, well, we do this and we do this really well, and we want to have a bit of fun at the same time. So we do some social events, we do some CSR that make sure that people understand who we are, what we do, and why you should engage with us over dealing with, I don't know, an alternative. So I hope that's been useful. I'm a bit ahead of time. I appreciate that, and I think we'll get some Q&A questions, and I'll do my best to answer them as best I can, drawing on my experiences. But yeah, is that okay, Marshane? Is that all right? I think, I'm sorry if the rain was bad at one point, but
No,
I can't
it's
control
fine.
that.
No, thank you so much. That was really great. I know some people had to jump off because I guess it was their lunch break and they had
Yeah.
to jump off. But thank you so much for this. If anybody has any questions, please send them through now. I'll also, in the comments, I'll give you our email address and our webpage information in case you're interested in some of our courses. But fire away if you have any questions.
I mean, I think if any of you disagree with what I've said, then put that in, because that's always interesting too, to get a sense of what people think you've said wrong or incorrectly.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Benjamin, yes, you can rewatch this again. I'll be sending out an email in the next couple of days with a link to this, and it will also be available on our blog, so you can watch it again there. I'm glad that everyone's found this really interesting.
Lucy. So I think in terms of people that are going to give you like a very succinct overview of further reading, Rory Sutherland at Ogilvy is very good. He brings a lot of psychological and economic considerations in, which firms often don't think about. Like, why do you pick red over green? Why do you pick blue over yellow? And what type of business are you trying to do? So he's really good at that. Philip Kotler is really good. Obviously, the courses here are really good. But I think in terms of that thinking, that's obviously good. Steve Jobs, obviously no longer with us, but his sort of brand philosophy and thinking about clean and crisp and making it, he want very exacting standards, but those exacting standards enabled Apple to become the business it is. And that's why it is so valuable, so immensely valuable. So I think some of those will be used.
Have you seen this question from Pascu about branding processes if you're working with different countries?
So when I've worked with countries on branding, you're normally trying to get them to a particular point. So are you trying to improve what they've got already? So are you doubling down on what they're already good at? Or are you trying to position them for something new that they want to be for? So is that investment attraction? Is that a particular sector that they want to become more known for? So I'll pick on the Middle East, but now, but the UAE has become very successful. It's now becoming a real hub globally for financial services, fintech, hedge funds, banking, private banking, investment banking, and all of the services that come with that. But it's been able to do that because it's one from a tax reason, it's tax free, but it's brought the expertise in, it's brought those people in, and it's providing sort of an agglomeration of why you would want to be there. And that's something that I think a lot of countries forget when you take them through the process. It's like, oh, we want to be really big in, I don't know, fintech. Okay, great, that's cool, good for you. But why should someone care? Why should someone come to you? And I guess to an extent, the UK has been a bit lazy. It's like, well, we're London. This is London. We've got lots of universities here. There's lots of already existing finance firms here, and they'll always be here. Maybe not. There are other places which can be more interesting and more fun. If you thought about living in Miami, if you thought about living in California, if you thought about living in the Middle East, thought about living in Singapore. So there is a process you have to take people through, and depending on the level that you're working for, if you're working with a minister or if you're working with a department, will be different. Because ultimately it will be a minister or the leader of the country that will want to position this in a particular way. But you've also got to do it and be realistic about what you say to those people and say, yeah, you can do that, but this will take longer than 6 months. This is going to take you a few years to build up that positioning, the point where people actually trust you and go, yeah, okay, there is actually something there. There is actually something there for us that we need to be there. Obviously, in the Middle East, one of the things has been is that because of the sovereign funds that they have, because of the family office wealth that's there, a lot of companies have gone there to try and win that business. And depending on who the firm is, if you're a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs, you're slightly better positioned than some unknown company from Belgium that no one's ever heard of, even though you might be big in Belgium. So your brand is obviously going to be quite important. And then to go back, yeah. So it really depends. But I think if you are doing country level branding, country level marketing, I think being honest and realistic is obviously really quite important. Because in some cases people are completely starting from scratch. Try and I'll pick on Greece because the country I know. Now, Greece doesn't have any domestic car companies. Cars are made in France, in Spain, in Germany, in Italy, Slovenia, and some in Poland. But even the cars that are made in Poland and Slovenia are made under license. They're made they're made for other car brands. So I think in Slovenia, Land Rover have got they make them there, and Mercedes make their G-Wagon in Austria, in Graz. So they're manufacturing it, but they don't have any of their own car brands. So if Greece came to you as an agency and said, look, we want to be known, we want to be branded as being one of the best places in the world to make cars, you'd be like, you've got no expertise in this whatsoever. Like you've got no competitive advantage in this whatsoever. So how are you going to do it? How do you actually start even thinking about the process of that to go through that? And you build that up, and do lots of engagement. It's hard work.
Are there any other questions, or should we wrap up? Right. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming along, everyone. And thank you so much, Rob, for your presentation. That was really great. As I've said before, I'll be emailing this presentation out to everyone in the next couple of days. But yeah, if you have any questions, please send them through to our inquiries team. Thank you so much for your time.